So Martha, we got to meet at this event today. I got to know you a little bit. I don't know, a long time. When was that? July? Was
Um,
it July? No.
it was for the Surrender to Rise, whenever that was.
Yes, she did it this year,
Yeah.
right? And so I got to hear your story for a little bit. It was 15 minutes or so. But now that we've gotten to know each other a little bit better between yesterday and today, and who knows about tomorrow? I have
Yeah.
no idea. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of it right here, right now.
Yeah.
But I would love you to share your journey in life with the people that are listening and watching this. And just to start it off, let's just go dive into a little bit about who you are, and what are you most excited about right now?
Wow. So that's a loaded question.
Sure.
That's a loaded question. What am I most excited about right now is just the vision and the mission that God's put on my heart. Who am I? I'm first a child of the one true King, and my mission is personally linked to my Creator and my personal relationship with God. I don't care about religion. I don't care about what sex or things. I don't care about any of that thing, any of those things. For me, my relationship with God is very personal. I don't need a building. I don't need a preacher. I just need what me and God have this understanding, and God speaks to me through my intuition, speaks to me through the thoughts that He gives me and the understanding that He gives me. And so that's what I'm most excited about now is just this vision and mission that God has put on my heart to walk alongside battle angels and to help them take their next step in their healing journey. So what is a battle angel? That's probably a question that your viewers are going to want to know. A battle angel is somebody that's been through an excessive amount of trauma. And an excessive amount of trauma, that doesn't mean like the things that I've been through, right? What it means is like things that derailed you and made you feel stuck or makes you feel afraid or makes you feel like you're not enough. Anything that's happened to you in your life that has allowed those feelings is excessive amount of trauma, right? Because trauma can't be measured. And a lot of times people will hear me speak and then they'll come up to me and they'll say something like, I can't say that I've been through trauma because I haven't been through the things that you talked about. So I must not have been. And I'm like, well, what's the hardest thing that you've ever been through? And they'll say, well, I got a divorce, or my parents were divorced, or my brother died in a drunken driving accident, or my grandparents, just there's always something, right? And that's their hardest thing. And I'm like, why don't you think that's traumatic? Did that change your life? And they're like, well, yeah, now I'm scared to get married, or I'm scared of this, or I'm scared of that. And I'm like, that's trauma, because our nervous system reacts to trauma, regardless of what kind of trauma it is, in the same way, because we're all human. Fight or flight is a nervous system response, regardless of the trauma, whether that's us getting a divorce or whether that's us being beaten physically, right? The trauma response is the same. Fight or flight, our nervous system overload, all of those things are the same. So you can't measure trauma because our nervous system doesn't know the difference. So when you ask what am I looking forward to, it's this vision of being able to make an impact, bring hope, bring understanding, bring empathy, and give space for those trauma angels or battle angels to be able to reclaim their lives regardless of where they're at.
Nice. And so where do you see yourself as a battle angel? Like, how did you come up with this term? Like, I like it,
Yeah.
so I'm just curious.
Yeah. So when I was building my brand and after I wrote my book, or while I was writing my book, I was doing a coaching program and they kept asking me, like, who's your target audience? Who are you trying to help? Like, what is it that you want to focus on? Like all the questions of when you're niching down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all those things. And it was hard for me to say, well, I just want survivors. And I'm like, I was just a survivor merely existing for many years, right? Because survival mode is just merely existing. There's nothing special about surviving, right? If you made it through your trauma, you are a survivor, right? So there wasn't anything special about that. And I wanted a term that made you feel special, made you feel like, no, I've gone a step beyond just surviving. I did something over and above just surviving. And so at first I was like, I'm a courageous warrior. Like that felt very powerful. And that was part of my book was Cult Survivor to Courageous Warrior, because I am a warrior. You are a warrior for a cause if you've done the healing journey in order to create that, right? And be able to talk about it and be able to help others. You are a warrior. But that still didn't deeply resonate with who I was trying to help, who I was trying to reach. And so I started praying on it. And like I shared today, like me and God have this understanding, like I'm going to ask for signs. I'm going to ask for guidance. I'm going to ask for an intuitive like pop, like tell me what and where, how, let's go. And so I was praying about it. And so I somehow it was dropped into my consciousness, no, these people that have struggled to overcome something and take their life back are battle angels. They have won the battle or are winning the battle, right? Because healing is an ongoing journey. There's never a destination. Well, we're like, finally, I made it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
healed. No, it's a journey. It's a process. Like I'm healing for the rest of my life because life's still happening. There's still things that happen regardless of how much therapy I've done or how much healing I've done or how much overcoming I've done. Life is still happening. And so I still have to continue to like find that strength, find that resilience, find that courage to keep on healing. So that's where that came from.
That's awesome. So, how does one decide that they are an angel to begin with if they experience this trauma?
So everything's a choice. And this is what people don't understand, or they don't they don't realize that life often is not happening to us, it's happening for us. And we get to make that choice and we get to make that differentiate, like we get to differentiate that, right? Whether it's happening to us or it's happening for us. Because if it's happening for us, we get to learn from it, we get to elevate from it. But learning is a choice. Elevating from it is a choice. Healing from it is a choice. And so that's the difference between life happening to us and life happening for us. If life's happening to us, it's like, oh crap, got hit with another thing, got, knocked over with another, right? That's happening to us. Life happens for me in order to help me grow, in order to force me to heal again, in order to help me to elevate, in order to be able to resonate with somebody else that's gone through something similar to help them do the same. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
a
so
choice.
yeah, you're right, exactly. And so for me, it took me a while to get to that place, right? I heard for you after a while, and you have to look at things different. So you have to look at it as an opportunity in a way, right? So when did you find that time that you started to think just focus on this now? That time you thought of for me, not to me.
Wow. I think that would probably be within the last 5 years of, I'd been on this healing journey. It's been 14 years. So I would say I'd been on the healing journey almost a decade. And I was getting ready to go through a divorce, my choice. And I made this decision, this very difficult decision to leave my marriage, which was a very secure marriage. We had just become friends rather than partners. And I wanted something more from a marriage than just friendship. And so I was getting ready to make this really big decision that was going to flip my life upside down, not only financially, but now we have to sell our house, we have to split assets, we have to do all this hard stuff. But I realized at the beginning of this process, I've got to do this for me because I know that I'm going to be stuck in this bubble of where I'm at right now. And this bubble no longer fits my vision. It no longer fits the purpose that I know that God has on my life. And I never envisioned any of the things that I've done over the last 18 months back then, but I knew that I had a choice to make. And I knew that I could no longer be a bystander of life. I had to be a participant in it. And my choices did reflect what my life was going to look like. And I did have the power to make the decisions in order to make my life look different, right? And so making that big, hard decision to go through a divorce and to leave my marriage and to have to do all the things that followed, I felt was only going to allow me to take control of my life and get to make decisions differently in order for my future to be different. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah, and it is a big decision to make, especially if you said everything felt secure and you were more of a friendship is what it, yeah. Um, so it's tough. I can imagine going through something like that, and who it affects outside of that, just
Yep.
besides yourself and your husband. Um, let's dive in a little bit to how you got to that point, right? So let's go back to how did Martha like start and open up and become this amazing person, right? Where did it all begin? I know some of
Yeah.
your journey, but I would love you to take everybody backwards first and
Yeah.
start there.
So we're going to go all the way back. So I was born and raised in a religious cult.
Mm-hmm.
Um, everything in our lives was controlled by this group, by the leader of this group. I call him Cult Man because that's what I've deemed him. But everything was controlled by him. Everything in our lives was ordered by him, like all the way to I was named by him. My parents didn't name me. I have 9 brothers and sisters, and everybody that was born in the cult was named by him. And so he was so fibrously intertwined in all of our lives that parents weren't our parents because he played that role. He was just so intertwined in our lives, right? So that's how I grew up. It's the only thing I knew. I didn't know that other people didn't have this same kind of experience. Like I knew people went to church and I just assumed everybody's church looked like this, right? Had no clue because I had no perspective. And when it's all you know, it's all you know, right?
Yeah.
So but then you start having life experiences. Like I was in public school in my middle school and high school years. I was in public school, so you're learning, okay, I'm different, I look different because we couldn't cut our hair, we couldn't wear jewelry, we couldn't wear makeup, we had to wear skirts all the time, we had button down blouses. Like we looked different, we looked, it set us apart. But within the cult confines, we were always told we're meant to be different. We're not meant to be of the world, right? We're a chosen people. We are special. And therefore, there are things expected of us by God that aren't expected of those other people because they're not chosen, right? So there was this tug of war between me of like wanting to fit in and not wanting to be different, but also knowing I was different, but feeling chosen and feeling special, right? And that's a weird dichotomy when you're young and you just want to make friends and you want to fit in and you want to, right? Like you don't always want to stick out like a sore thumb everywhere you go and everything you do. And so, like a typical teenager, I started rebelling. I started as soon as I had my driver's license, I started, and I started working and making my own money. Then I started buying my own clothes. And so I would hide like my shorts and my pants under my skirt when I would leave the house. And then I would change in my truck. And so I started trying to figure out who I was outside of all of these rules and regulations and dietary things. Like I tried to figure out like, who's Martha? Who do I want to be? But that was so impossible because everything had to go back to the cult, right? And so, and then at age 18, when I graduated high school, I was chosen by the cult leader and I was taken from my family and I was moved into the compound. And so, because in our cult, unlike some of other cults, all of us that were part of the cult didn't live on the compound. We all had our own separate homes. We lived with our parents or, whoever, but we didn't all live on the compound. And my family had moved to North Carolina when I was 12 because my dad's business had gotten bought out. And so I had a different exposure than many other people in our cult because I lived further away and I no longer spent every single weekend at the compound, which growing up before that, till age 12, we went to the compound every single weekend, which was a 4.5 hour drive one way. We would do it every Friday night and come home late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And that was our life. Like we spent every single weekend at the compound. So when we moved to North Carolina, I no longer spent every weekend at the compound and we had this more of this liberty and this freedom, but we still listened to all the sermons around our speakerphone. And so our life was still very regimented. It was very structured. It was very scheduled because it all had to work around, these sermons, and the weekends were still confined by Cult Man, right? But then when I was chosen at 18, and moved into the compound. So now I'm taken from my parents, taken from my siblings, and I'm extracted and I'm moved into the compound. And now Cult Man is that is all I have. There was a few kids that were from other families that lived in the compound at the same time, but I was moved away from them too. And so it was a very lonely existence. And the first thing that happened to me when I moved into the compound is Cult Man pulled me aside and told me that I was defiled, I was ugly, I was fat. Basically,
As soon as you went in?
as soon as I
Okay.
went, yes. Um, and yet he had chosen me, right? He knew all of these things about me, and he had taken an interest in me since age 7, grooming me, right, for this moment, right? But when I arrived at the compound and he sees me and he's like, "You're fat, you're ugly, you're defiled, you're, don't deserve to be here. So we're going to cleanse you." And so I went on this cleanse diet that he put me on, which was 1 gallon of Tang per day. And that was all I had for 5
Tang?
months. Tang.
What's Tang?
Tang is like a powdery, like Kool-Aid
Okay.
mixture that, like, it's called orange Tang. That's what it was.
Okay.
And I would get 1 gallon per day of Tang, and every day I was weighed, and I thought like this was like, okay, a couple days, couple weeks, whatever, but it was 5 months, and I basically was
That's
being
all you got.
starved to death. Yes. That was my intro to living in the compound. But I thought I deserved it. I thought that I had, because I had had all of these experiences with boys, with drugs, with alcohol, with smoking. I was defiled. I was filthy. I was ugly. I took on all of those things that he said about me. And I thought, like, because he was God to us, right? We didn't have a personal relationship with God. We weren't taught. He was our intercessor. Everything went to him, and then he took it to God for us. We didn't have a personal relationship with God, right? So this was my penance. I deserved all of this. That was what I told myself. That's the way that I felt. But that was the beginning of the next 8 years of just hell, where I was physically tortured. I was, after the starvation, I was beaten regularly. There was just so much trauma that next 8 years. And then there comes a time where, now looking back, I realized that he was just trying to break me. He was trying to get me to submit. And my personality is not one of submission. I didn't know that he had been grooming me since age 7 to be a concubine, to be a wife, to, like, I didn't realize that, right? Like, I didn't understand that that was even part of this, the way that he operated with women. Like, that was very hush hush. We didn't talk about that. That wasn't public knowledge until way after I got out of the cult, where I saw how many he had done this with,
Mm.
right? So I'm just thinking that I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. I never measure up. I'm not worthy, right? And so just fast forward, it was lots of hell for that 8 years. At 20, almost 26 years old, I was working for one of the cult owned businesses, and they had the internet, and I found my sister. I found one of my sisters, and her and I started chatting, and I found out she was pregnant.
In the
And
cult.
she was outside of the
Or she was
cult. She
outside.
had left years before.
Oh.
Yeah. So you could leave the cult and just be done, right? Like, you would just not come back, or you would
Mm.
just separate yourself or whatever. Like, you could leave willingly, and I couldn't, because I lived in the compound. Once you're chosen, there's a lot of
So
different
she
rules.
wasn't
She
chosen.
was not
She was
chosen.
able to get up and
Yes.
go.
And so she was just able to, and so she had separated herself like 6 years before.
Mm.
And she'd been excommunicated, because if you leave, you're excommunicated. So you're not allowed to talk to your family. You're not allowed to talk to anybody inside. Like, so I hadn't talked to her for years. And so, until I found her on the internet. But I found out she was pregnant, and that was my light switch moment, because growing up in the cult, we couldn't have relationships with non-believers or with non people from the cult, right? So I didn't have grandparents, I didn't have aunts and uncles, I didn't have cousins. I wasn't allowed any of those relationships because they weren't part of the cult. So when my sister told me she was pregnant, I was like, something said, I can't let this child have to grow up without me, because that's how I grew up, and that's not fair. I don't want her to, or him or her to grow up without her aunt. Like that, that was my light switch moment. And I didn't then have the ability to choose me. I didn't know how to choose me. I'd never had the courage to choose me, but I found the courage to choose that baby. And so 10 days after finding out she was pregnant, I escaped during a crazy blizzard, Wisconsin blizzard, and that was divinely timed. And it was just, the whole story is in my book, Glory Going All In. So if you want to know more about my escape, check out my book. But I escaped. I came back to North Carolina, and I was here for my niece to be born. She's 19 years old now, and I call her my reason, because she was my reason that I found the courage. I found the strength to escape a really dangerous and scary situation. I had to hide for 3 months because his henchmen were after me and looking for me to bring me back. But yeah, that's the acorn version of the things that happened to me to lead up to who I've had to heal from.
That's a lot. So is it just women that they chose?
He chose,
He
yes.
chose.
Mm-hmm.
So you called him the cult man,
Mm-hmm.
and then he had people working for him underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would he typically do? He would pick women to be his wives?
No, so that wasn't public.
Uh-huh.
So he had a wife.
Okay.
But then come to find out, he had many concubines. He had many women that he raped. He had many
Mm.
women that had abortions because they got pregnant by him. Like that, but that was all hush hush. Nobody knew that.
Okay.
So I had no idea I was being groomed to be a concubine. I had no idea that he was, because he didn't take anybody officially as a wife. He took them as an undercover, piece of, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what made you like go on the internet? And I mean, did you knew you had a sister,
Yeah.
right? And so you were just like, let me look for her.
Yeah. So, I was lonely. I had nobody. And I worked 12 to 16-hour days, 365 days a year, and never got paid for anything, because that was my expectation. That was the expectation of me, working for a cult owned business. I didn't get paid for it. And so it was basically slave labor, right? And
Yeah.
so I had all this time to do nothing. And it was my, like, this was just, your mind starts doing things, when you're alone for that many hours a day. And um, I just, I figured out the internet, because the internet wasn't a thing when I went into the cult. I
Mm.
didn't know, like, this is the 90s. I didn't know the internet. And so when the internet got put into the shop, like, I figured it out. Like, I figured out AOL, and I started searching, and I found my sister. So
Yeah,
yeah.
dial up. You're like, come
Yep.
on, hurry up.
That's right. That's right.
Oh man, you were if I can ask, were you beaten in any way, or was it just you were just like you were just there and you only had that strict diet for the some time? And
Oh, I was beaten
were you?
regularly.
Okay.
Yes, physically, with 2x4s, with electrical cords, with wooden spoons, with anything he could get his hands on.
Mm.
Yeah, I had bones broken that were never treated. I had my head shaved 15 times because I ran away once and got caught and got brought back. And my head was shaved, and I got all of my things thrown into a burn pile and burned. Everything that I owned was thrown in a burn pile and burned. Like, he did everything he could to try to break me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
What were the reasons that you would be get beaten for?
If I got caught talking to somebody I wasn't supposed to be talking to, if I woke up late, if I fell asleep during a sermon, if I was sitting wrong, if I, like, it didn't even have to be a reason. If I didn't lose enough weight, like, there's any reason, like, because he was constantly trying to break me. He was constantly trying to get me to submit. And I drove him crazy because I didn't know how to submit. I didn't know how to not be who God created me to be. And it didn't serve me well while I was there, but now I see why. I now I see why. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think your calling is now?
Um my calling now is to be able to see, hold space for,
Mm-hmm.
and help others that have experiences of trauma to take their next step in their healing
So not
journey.
just cults. I
No,
know you
trauma in
explained already,
general. Yeah.
just trauma, so
Yeah.
they can understand that they can get out of it as
Right.
well, right?
Right. Because oftentimes when big things happen to us, we get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
We get stuck in feeling like a victim.
Yeah.
We get stuck feeling alone. We get stuck feeling like there's no way out. And there's always a way out. But there's things that we have to do and choices that we have to make in order to get out, to rewire our nervous system, to rewire our neural pathways, right? Like there's the steps that we have to make and choices that we have to make in order to create the space for that healing. So that's where my mission and
Yeah.
passion comes.
And all right, go back real quick on the cult part. That still exists?
Yes, I
Okay.
still have a sister there, one
Still have a
sister.
sister there.
Hmm.
And how old is she?
She's 54.
Wow. And she can't get out.
She could.
She just chose not to
Yeah.
because she probably thinks that she's meant to
She's
be there.
so she feels like she is our salvation.
Okay.
So I know that she has a very heavy feeling that she has to save all of us, right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't even live in the compound, so she could literally
Uh,
just never go again. And you know, yeah,
just ingrained in her, you
yeah.
think?
Well, it's all she knows.
Yeah.
She's been there for 50 years.
Yeah.
She joined. My parents joined when she was 4.
What what did you feel when you were putting this into words to be published that other people could pick up and actually read about everything you experienced?
Um, yeah. So when I finally got the nerve and when I finally got the courage to write it down, um, I knew that I had to be honest. I had to tell my truth because not only was I telling my story, but I'm telling tons of other people's stories, not just from my cult, but there's a lot of other cults, right? And so I knew that I had a responsibility to be vulnerable and to tell my truth. Um, I I felt like I kind of did it clinically, as in I was just kind of sharing what happened. I left a lot of emotion out because it was too hard to go back and relive those things, right? But I felt like I did just enough to be able to paint the picture of what I experienced so that people would understand what that was, but also would understand why I needed to go on this healing journey that I talk about all the time, right? And so I felt like it was important to be honest and to not only tell my story, but I was telling the story for many people.
Yeah, and I know you said that you didn't go into too much detail. I think you went into quite
Okay.
a bit. I think so. At
Okay.
least I can picture it, right? So I'm just saying. So whoever's listening, this is Glory going all in that Martha wrote about her life, being in a cult and come out of it. And so I got to the point where you are at the compound. I believe that's where I ended. And so you're doing your Tang, diet that we were talking about earlier. And so, I don't know how far into the book. Obviously, I'm guessing it's not the whole story, everything, right? You got to the point where you're living a better life now. You've helping other people. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the book is kind of separated into 3 sections. It's the cult life, and then it's some of the healing journey. And I leave a lot of the details out of the healing journey because it would have been like 3 books because it's been the last, 20 years. And then the last part is the coaching principles that I use to help others to overcome their trauma. So you're still in the cult years of the where you're reading right now is still part of the cult years.
So there's something at the end that like I personally could take action on if I wanted to.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Is there one thing from that end of the book that you could share with us?
Yeah, it's a journey. Like there's no pill that you can take to overcome trauma. There's no like magic sauce. It's it's a journey and it starts with understanding who you are and understanding that you're worth the healing, you're worth overcoming, you're worth becoming strong and resilient and courageous and understanding you can reclaim your identity after the types of things that I experienced. It's within. You have to dig deep and you have to find that inner strength and that inner knowing And for me, I tapped into my faith. I tapped into a place of like understanding who I was, who God says I am, and understanding that that had to carry me through this healing journey in itself. Because you are going to have ups and downs. You are going to have times when you feel really weak. And is it really worth going back through the things that I experienced to try to heal those things, right? Like it just there's a lot of places that require you to go back and to heal that, to forgive that, to let it go, and that can be painful, right? But I say to my clients all the time, we can't heal something that we refuse to feel. Because if we refuse to feel it, we are either numbing or we are acting like it didn't exist. And you cannot be intentional about healing something that you refuse to heal or refuse to feel. And so I had to practice that. I had to practice feeling all of that in order to forgive it, to let it go, to put it to rest, whatever it was as the situations they came up and the healing required it.
Yeah, and you said you found faith in God, and so you had faith with God for a long time in your life, even when everything was going wrong?
So no, the in the cult, I think we talked about this a little bit. In the cult, we were kind of told about the angry God, right? The God of the hell, brimstone, and fire. That you could never be pleasing to God. That God was always angry at you for your sins, right? I was never taught about the love of God or the mercy and grace and compassion and all of those things. We were never taught that in the cult. So when I escaped the cult at age 26, I was like, I'm done with God. Like, why, like, why would I want to love a God that it allowed these things to happen to me and hurt me in his name, right? Because the cult leader that abused me did it in the name of God, right? He was our intercessor. He was like our way to God. And so I ran from God for many years until my life imploded and I realized that I couldn't do it alone, that I needed to re-identify with my faith, and I had to question everything that I had ever learned about God and decide who God was for me. And that was a journey back to my faith, right? And I talk about that in the book, and of how it happened and how I found my way after having a big fight with my then husband. I went running and literally ended up in the front of a church, and I was like, "What? Like that's a God thing, right?" And I ended up sneaking out of my house for a couple of months every Sunday to go to church, because there was something there that kept calling to me. And it was this new idea that Jesus could love me, that I was lovable, that I wasn't too broken, that I wasn't too damaged, that I hadn't sinned too much, that God could still love me and that God could redeem me and God could help me navigate this thing that I was going through because I was in a really, really dark place. And so that was the start of me really asking the questions and seeking and re-identifying with my faith journey.
Yeah, and you come a long way, that's for sure. Going through everything, right? So what is your ultimate goal now, like with helping people and have them, find themselves and be positive, uplifting, have faith?
Yeah. So this mission is way bigger than me, right? And I find that all the things that I've ever been through have prepared me for this moment, right? This moment of being and wanting to give back and wanting to help others to navigate their own healing journeys. Because so often we stay stuck because we don't know there's another way. And so we stay stuck in our misery. We stay stuck in our bad habits. We stay stuck in our pain. We stay stuck at whatever it is. And I know that it's really lonely when you're stuck, but it can also be lonely when you're on a healing journey, right? And so I want to um, help others to understand, like you don't have to do this alone. I wish there had been a me that was like, hey, like I don't have the exact roadmap for you, but there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of like, I'll be your cheerleader, whatever it is that you need. We can take this next step together. And just understanding that you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. And I that's what my podcast is kind of all about too, like people hearing your journey and knowing that they're not alone and they can find you or somebody else and connect in that way. So how does somebody connect with you, Martha?
On social media, I'm under my name, Martha Kartaoui, on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on TikTok under Let Glory Shine. I have a TV show, Let Glory Shine. Yeah, you Google my name, you can find me all over the place.
Just look you up.
Yeah, just look
Yeah,
it up.
actually,
Yeah.
awesome.
Have
Uh,
good people call my people.
yeah, you're all over the place. So I ask one question at the end. I ask every guest. So what are 3 key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Wow, just 3?
Yeah, let's just go with 3 and we'll keep it there.
Okay.
I know there's a lot. Yeah.
Um, you are not your pain. You are not your trauma. You are not the things that happen to you, and they don't have to define you, but you have to choose a different way. You have to choose a healing journey. You have to choose to step out of that story, to rewrite the narrative, and to choose to not allow those things to define you. That would be one. Number 2 would be that you don't have to do it alone. Like, you don't have to do it alone, right? So often we get stuck in nobody's going to understand my pain because who else has been in a cult and had all these crazy stuff happen to them? And the truth is pain, trauma is trauma. Like, our nervous system reacts the same way to pain from a cult as it does from pain from a divorce or pain from whatever else you can think of, right? Like, our nervous system doesn't know the difference. And so pain is pain. It doesn't matter what that pain is. We all can relate to one another in our pain, in our trauma. And so you don't have to do it alone. And the third thing I would say is that there will come a time when you have to look at yourself in the mirror and you have to reconcile who you see in the mirror looking back at you. And you're either going to love that person or you're not. And if you don't, then you have to do something about it. And you can do something about it. You can choose to change that person, change the narrative, change what it is that you don't like about that reflection looking back at you. Often there's fear attached to that, or shame, or guilt, or other identities that others put on you that you are seeing of yourself, and letting those things go is so freeing. And so I just want to give you permission to look at yourself in the mirror and make a choice.
Yeah. And I'll add to that is like surrounding yourself with the right people. So, and I know you found a good group of people that you're surrounding yourself with that at least I met, I don't know about everybody else, but I would imagine they're good people too. Um, so I would add on to that, Martha, it's been great having you with me and sharing your journey through the cult, everything you're doing to help people. And anybody listening or watching this, go pick up her book and I'll drop the link in the show notes. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. This was so much fun. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.